Welcome everyone. I am so glad that you're here to support authors and readers and of course Grassroots Bookstore. I'm Ashley, the event and social media coordinator for Grassroots, and tonight we have Katherine Roy and Richard Ho for their book Red Rover. Let me just jump in with a couple of introductions and explain how the event is going to work, and then we will pass it on. Katherine Roy is the award-winning author and illustrator of Neighborhood Sharks and How to Be an Elephant. She is also the illustrator of Red Rover and Otis and Will Discover the Deep. She lives in Oregon with her husband and sons. Learn about her research, drawing process, and more at her website. And you can check out the books behind her. Richard Ho is an author who was once himself a child. He is a former journalist and educational scriptwriter who enjoys writing stories about science, culture, and the magic of everyday life. Red Rover, Curiosity on Mars was his first book for young readers. So here's the way that tonight will work. Katherine and Richard will lead a reading, hold discussion, and then discuss Perseverance's landing today, while Katherine demonstrates some drawing. And then we'll open up the floor to a Q&A from audience members for the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. Please feel free to use the Q&A chat box to indicate if you have a question at any point during the presentation. Afterward, we'll be using that to run the Q&A portion of the event. I also want to note that the link to buy Red Rover, Curiosity on Mars, will be in the chat shortly. I highly encourage you to buy it from us. Not only will you be supporting Katherine and Richard as authors, but also Grassroots as a small indie bookstore that is able to bring events like this to you. We do have signed copies in our storefront and more coming soon, and we are giving away free prints with each book purchased. Thank you for holding up the example. And with all that being said, I am now going to pass it over to Katherine and Richard.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Richard, you want to start?
This is really exciting for... Yeah, sure. I was going to say that this is really exciting for both Katherine and me because this is our first event together for Red Rover. The book came out in October 2019, but we weren't able to do joint events. You know, we're on opposite coasts. And also the pandemic happened in the middle. So so this is actually our first time doing an event together for this book, which is really exciting. It's long overdue, and I'm very excited to be here. I do feel like the guest here because I'm not local. I'm out on the East Coast. I'm in New Jersey. So I feel very welcome here in Oregon. Virtually. And excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to be doing this with Richard too. As he said, it's our first presentation, and I'm so excited that some of you I know and love, family and friends, are watching with us now. And hopefully I'm really excited about this book and the launch that happened today, which if you're watching live was just so inspiring and exciting. And I choked up a little bit that she landed safely, and we're going to talk all about that tonight and do a little bit of drawing and talk about our book. But I think we're going to start with a reading, right, Richard?
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. So without further ado, here we have Red Rover.
So if you've got a copy at home, feel free to follow along. If you don't, we're going to hold it up and just do our best to show you the pictures and words as we go.
Right. All right. So starting with the gorgeous title page, Red Rover, Curiosity on Mars. The little rover likes to roam. It leaves long, straight tracks as it goes. The tracks play hide and seek, waiting for the rover to find them again. The rover never gets tired. It crosses plains, climbs hills, and traces the bottoms of craters. It rolls on and on. It is curious. It wants to learn about the world around it. It observes, measures, collects. It is always looking for water. Maybe it is thirsty.
The rover seems lonely, roaming by itself, but it is not alone. It has friends that came before. They sailed across a sea of space and landed on unfamiliar ground. They found paths to strange new places and journeyed far and wide. They had a spirit of adventure and seized every opportunity to explore. Just like this rover. Like them, it looks up. It talks to whoever sent it. It tells them what it is like to live here. It tells them what it is like here. It says it is quiet, but not still, vast, but not empty, barren, but not lifeless. Maybe. It is not easy to live here. The air is thin. The storms are strong. You might get stuck in the sand. Everything is, this is tricky because we got to open this up. RED. As far as the eye can see, but it is beautiful.
They call me Mars. I am not like your world. I am cold. I am every shade of red. I am very far away, but I am not alone. I see the rover. I see its friends. I see the stars, and I wonder who will visit next.
Now we know.
And now we know, exactly, as of today, we have the next visitor to Mars. So with that, I think we're going to launch into a little bit of a discussion of Perseverance, the new rover that just landed today, this afternoon, just a couple of hours ago. I'm sure a lot of people here were also following along live, like Katherine and I. I watched it with my kids. We were watching the NASA live feed, and it was very, very exciting. I had to explain to them that there wasn't going to be actually any video of the actual rover touching down because of, it's not something that we have the technology for yet, but hopefully in the future. But they saw the little computer simulation of the rover touching down, and it was really exciting and very emotional. It's one of those things that really gets you choked up, when you see like the mission control erupting into applause, and it's just the culmination of so much hard work, and it's really, really quite amazing. So Perseverance was actually launched 7 months ago, back in July.
Wait. Let's talk. We got to talk about the couple questions about the book first.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We went out of order there. So let's do that. Let's backtrack a little bit.
I just wanted to say I've never heard you read it before, and it was really fun. Coming from a manuscript that I've never heard you read out loud. Actually, just listening to you talk. Right. And one of the things that's really unique about our book and the voice that Richard chose was to have Mars turn out to be the narrator when it switches over to the introduction of Mars. They call me Mars. I am not like your world. And so I wanted to ask Richard, I'd love to hear him talk about the inspiration for the voice and for this book in general, and why you chose to tell this story in this particular way. Yeah.
Right. So the second question first, I guess. The reason I wrote this book is because I've always been a huge space nerd ever since childhood. I've always loved space and everything about space exploration. There was a time when I was a kid that, like most kids, I wanted to be an astronaut, and then I realized that probably wasn't going to be in the cards. I had terrible eyesight. I couldn't be a pilot, so that was out. Then I thought maybe I'll be an astrophysicist, and then I realized how much math was involved. I said no, I'll be a writer. So I've always wanted to somehow connect with that world, and I found my way to do it by writing the story. Specifically, Mars has always been something that captured my imagination because it's so close to Earth. It's like outside of the moon, it's the next destination that we're aiming for, and it's always been something that, like, throughout the history of literature and science fiction, it's always been like one of those things, Martians, and like it's always been something that has captured our imagination. And so I've always wanted to do a story about that, but specifically with the rovers. The idea of like space probes is interesting, but like to me, to see like this little rover rolling along the landscape of a completely alien planet by itself just really captured me. And it's such an earnest thing to think about, like it's alone, but it's not really, because there's a lot of different things that we've sent up there over the years. So that was sort of the spark of the idea of following one of these rovers. And Curiosity was the most recent one up until today. So that's the one I chose to focus on. It's also obviously the most advanced of all the rovers that have been sent. And it just really spoke to me. And like I felt like it was a character in of itself. That being said, I didn't want to go the direction of making Curiosity the narrator or like the protagonist per se. Like I wanted to do a different spin on it. And it occurred to me that if you're talking about sort of like the majesty of space travel and exploring a new planet, a lot of the wonder and awe that we have, like as humans looking up at the sky and seeing these planets, if you flip it and go from the perspective of the planet itself, looking at this foreign thing that's just sort of rolling around, what is this? It's a stranger, but it's here and it seems friendly, and it's so I felt like that was a cool perspective to go with, and I thought that it could mirror in a lot of ways the sort of childlike innocence of like somebody like young looking at something like this for the first time. So that's why I went with Mars as the narrator, and I wanted to make it a surprise. So it was sort of a reveal towards the end of the story, not something that was from the very beginning. So
yeah, cool. No, I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's obviously the art is incredible. It's breathtaking, and I've always the first time I got one of your sketches, it had been a couple of months after after you had signed on to illustrate, and I saw it was Curiosity Going Up the Hill, and I was just so completely overwhelmed by that, because it's just like you picture how these things are going to be in your head, but until you actually see sketches and see art, it's incredible. So I wanted to ask you a little bit. The color palette for this book is incredible. There's obviously, red is, something that you can't get away from. This is Mars, so like that's going to be the central color. But how did you go about building out the palette around that? Because there's so many interesting shades and hues that you were able to incorporate, and I just want to hear about how that process was.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's so nice to hear your first impressions of the artwork. For those of you listening who don't know and maybe imagine the process and collaboration between illustrators and authors a particular way, most of the times authors don't choose their illustrator, have almost no input in who their illustrator is. And not only that, don't meet their illustrator at all, or even talk to their illustrator during the process of making the book. The editor is like the director who acquires the manuscript, or like if it were a film, a screenplay, and then says, thank you for your screenplay, thank you for your manuscript, and then now I'm going to go pick the actors and the cinematographer and everything, and the writer might not have much to do with the movie after that. So sometimes it works like that, and in this case, Richard and I did not communicate or talk until the project was basically done. So it's always nice to hear that he had a good impression of my work, because I don't know what he's thinking when I turn things in, and you just hope as the illustrator that the author likes what you're doing. And in this case, that was true. When I first got the manuscript, I connected to the idea of following this little rover, like this little creature, exploring this planet all by herself. And that was my way into what I thought, before I'd been offered this particular manuscript, I wouldn't be interested in, because I didn't think that there was an accessible way to talk about geology. It sounds like kind of a dry academic subject. But in this case, the rover gives us this in. And one of the things that you discover when you start to do research about Mars and the red planet is that it's red because it's basically covered in rust. But when she drills into the planet, there's blue rock and blue dirt and dust that she pulls out when she drills. And so when you see the raw images that come back from the rover, and you can look at everything that she does on NASA's website, each day they post new images. She's still out there working. You see all these blues contrasted with the reds. And so that was sort of my hook and my in. If the planet is red, then the rover should be a little bit more blue. And I can use blue highlights and blue shadows throughout the book to really have a lot of contrast. So a page like this, I'm using these strong French ultramarine and cerulean blues to show, a little bit of contrast, and to show these sort of inner rock samples that are being pulled up. And then of course, night skies we associate with being blue and being purple. And so that really contrasted well with these yellows and oranges and reds that are on the planet. And so it just had a great opportunity for contrast as a color palette. And then you can play with these rich colors next to each other and really make things pop. So I loved playing with the color for this book. And even though it is a red book, obviously there's just so many other colors to play with and explore as a painter. And in fact, the background art for this is one of my favorite paintings because it was just so fun to do this night sky and Curiosity looking up. But of course, there's other colors in it too. Trying to get from blue sky to yellow to this like dusty red area was very tricky. But I was proud of this page. It was one of the first ones that I did, and it turned out well. I felt like the whole time I was just sort of sneaking blues into different places to make that red pop. And of course, we have to get to this gatefold. Richard gave me this lovely opportunity to do what's called a gatefold, this fold out page in here. And I knew that needed to say RED really big. So how can you make red stand out? Well, one of the things to do is to have some blues and other colors ahead of it so that you can make it pop. So yeah, so Curiosity's actual science was the way in with the colors that she brings up to the surface, and the night sky, and then finding a way to put those things together. So I'm so glad you like it.
Awesome. And yeah, of course. And another thing that's really interesting is the fact that Curiosity itself seems to have such a personality. And I'm just so impressed by how you were able to do that. Was that something that you specifically wanted to find opportunities for, like, making it so like a little head tilt, or, like those things, those little touches that really bring the rover to life?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's all about using more dynamic angles, because she is kind of a box with a mast and then a head and wheels, but the way that she moves and the pictures that they take and the selfies that she takes on the planet, she'll turn the camera around on her what's the front arm? Just the arm. Forget what the part
mask cam
is called.
Mask cam.
The mask cam. Okay, so she'll turn that around and take a bunch of selfies upside down, and then they get stitched together at NASA's headquarters. And so she takes all these pictures of herself. So I know that she's a robot, but it makes her seem very alive and sort of feisty and adventurous, and out on this solo mission, documenting it for all of us. And one of the things that helped me think about how to make her more interesting was watching the movie WALL-E, and a couple of other movies where the rover just has so much personality, or the WALL-E, the robot, has so much personality. And I think when you tilt them and you put them on angles, and you like lift up one of the wheels so that they can go over a rock. These are things that I looked at a lot of reference photos from NASA. But if you make something a little bit unstable, like lifting up a foot like that, or a wheel, and then you put some motion lines, it suddenly feels a lot more like a character and less like a robot. So I tried to pay attention to motion and angles, and making the drawings as dynamic compositionally as possible, so that there's a more sense of life to her. Yeah.
Amazing. Cool.
Thanks.
So at this point, I think we should probably move on to the Perseverance discussion. We're going to keep moving and then have time for questions at the end. Yeah. So the plan was for me to sort of give a rundown of the Perseverance mission. And as I'm doing that, Catherine's going to do a little bit of a drawing demonstration. So we're going to see. Yeah. So we've got the pad there. Okay, great. So don't pay attention
and
to me.
At home, if you want to draw along, if you want to draw along with me as I'm showing things, I'm going to try to keep the drawings really simple. If you can write letters in an alphabet, you can draw, the letter C and the letter A. Like you can draw, and the letter V. You can draw what I'm going to draw. But basically, I'm going to be the visual Vanna White demonstrator of Richard describing what happened today. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Awesome. So I was saying before that Perseverance was launched last July. So it's been 7 months, 7-month journey from Earth to Mars. That's how far away it is. And with that 7-month journey, it came to an end with 7 very scary moments, 7 very scary minutes today. So they call it NASA and JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, who created the rovers. They call it the 7 minutes of terror. It's basically when the rover gets to the end of its journey, it's entering the atmosphere of Mars. Mm-hmm. And from that point till the time it touches down is about 7 minutes. Now, the reason it's so scary is because there's an 11-minute transmission lag. So it takes 11 minutes for any signal from Mars to get to Earth because of the distance. And so by the time NASA gets this first signal from Perseverance, it's already on the ground. So there's nothing that we can do here on Earth to help it. So basically, this whole 7-minute process is completely automated. Perseverance does it all by itself. So that's pretty amazing. But it's also, it's so incredible because everything has to go exactly right. And so they say that 40% of all Mars missions have failed. So this is not an easy thing. So the last couple from NASA have all been successful. And so we're sort of used to it. But it's never a guarantee. So everybody was always on pins and needles in mission control and watching at home. So 7 minutes of terror begin with the aeroshell. So basically that sort of dome-shaped thing that separates from the rest of the spacecraft. Exactly, right. So that starts to enter the atmosphere. And from there, the friction of the atmosphere really ups the heat factor. So it turns into basically a fireball as it's coming down the atmosphere. it needs to slow down. So the friction is slowing it down a little bit. But at that point, it is going roughly 12,500 miles per hour. So that's really way too fast, obviously, to land. So it's got to slow down a lot. Part of that is the friction from the descent. And then at a certain point, the parachute deploys. So I think it is at, I don't have the exact altitude, but it's a supersonic parachute. It's 70 and a half meters, and I'm sorry, 70 and a half feet in diameter. So it's a massive parachute. And it comes out the top of the aeroshell, and it slows it down significantly. So at that point, it is at a much safer velocity, and it's still too fast though. So once that coasts for a little while, it's going to drop the heat shield. So the heat shield is that little piece at the bottom. If you think of the aeroshell as sort of like two halves of an egg, so the heat shield is the bottom half, that falls away. And for the first time, Perseverance, as the rover, is sort of tucked inside on the inside. So it's exposed to the atmosphere for the first time. So at that point, heat shield falls away, the parachute detaches. So it is now up to something called the descent stage. Now, the descent stage is basically a jetpack that's on top of the rover. It's got 8 rockets all around it. And it's like a platform. It's basically like a platform that has thrusters, 8 thrusters all around, and the rover is sort of dangling underneath it. And those thrusters fire, they're pointed down. They're pointed down toward the ground, and they are supposed to slow down the whole package even further. So that fires up, and it's moving down. And then at some point, it's going to go into the sky crane maneuver. Now, this is one of the crazy ideas that NASA came up with, and it's brilliant. Basically, the descent stage is going to lower the rover on cables. There's, I think, 4 cables that come down. They're 21 feet long. And so the rover is basically hanging by these cables, and it's getting lowered, lower and lower, closer to the ground, until finally it touches down. And when it touches down, it has sensors that tells it that it's on the ground. And at that point, it cuts the cables, and the descent stage flies off so that it can crash into, I'm going too fast, I'm sorry. So Perseverance is on the ground, cables are cut, descent stage flies off and safely crashes into the ground somewhere at a safe distance. And at that point, Perseverance is down and sends the first signal to NASA. Everybody cheers. And that is the end of the 7 minutes of terror. And we got the first image of the ground pretty soon after that, about a minute or two after they got the signal that it touched down. It took a picture and sent it back. And yeah, so we are now in the stage where we're awaiting all of the data that's going to come back over the next months and years, really. It's going to send back so many pictures and videos. It has microphones on it. So it's the first time we're actually going to get sound files of what the wind sounds like in Mars. Lots of great stuff. Yeah, it's incredible. So basically, as Katherine's showing right now, this rover looks a lot like Curiosity. It's based on the same basic design. It is slightly longer. It's got, I think, about 12 centimeters longer. But the same basic design with 6 wheels. The wheels themselves are similar, but they are different. The Perseverance wheels are, how are they different? Let's see. They are bigger, but they're narrower. And they have a different tread system, but it's hard to show that. Yeah, that's exactly right. So the engineers at JPL, they did a lot of testing in the last 9 years since Curiosity landed. And they were able to come up with a design that's slightly better for getting a grip on the soil and the rock. And I saw a question there pop up. I guess we'll get through this first, and then we'll answer all those questions. Those are great questions. So some other differences between Perseverance and Curiosity. The cameras. Curiosity had 7 cameras on the mast, including the top 2, which is sort of like the head, the mast cam. It looks like an eye. So those 2 cameras are color cameras. And then Perseverance actually upped the camera game significantly. It has 23 cameras, including a lot of HD video cameras. So we can actually take video. We're looking forward to seeing that. And there is the same sort of arm that extends out. So Curiosity and Perseverance both have this arm that can extend about 2 meters out. And it has a lot of instruments on the end of it. So the turret is that piece at the end there. And it's usually got a drill and some other instruments. Now, the turret on Perseverance is a lot bigger and heavier because one of the mission objectives that it has that's different than Curiosity is it's basically going to drill core samples like really deep into the ground on Mars and leave sealed tubes of rocks and soil on the surface so that a future mission can go and pick it up and bring it back to Earth. So that's really exciting. That's never been done before. So that's what that drill is on the end of the arm. It's a lot bigger than the one on Curiosity. And then another thing, my personal favorite difference with Perseverance is Ingenuity. So this is a little helicopter that hitched along for a ride. It was actually, so it's basically a helicopter drone. It's going to be dropped onto the surface at various points by the rover, and the rover is going to drive away. And once it's a safe distance away, the helicopter is going to start spinning and fly up into the sky and fly around and take pictures and do a lot of amazing things, measuring the atmosphere. Really cool stuff. This will be the first powered flight on another planet. So that's all coming in the next couple of months. The only other thing that I guess it's not something that we can show, but there's an instrument called MOXIE, which is about the size of a car battery, and it's somewhere on the front of, I think it's on the front of the rover, and it's basically an oxygen creator. So this is going to be something that hopefully future astronauts are going to be able to use to create oxygen for whatever habitats they build on Mars as they're exploring. There's Perseverance. Very similar to its friend Curiosity. Awesome.
Oh, Katherine.
So,
yep. Okay, I don't know why that happened, but I was just going to say that the wheels are a little bit different on Perseverance, as Richard said, so that the tread is straight instead of Curiosity had this chevron pattern, but they've decided that this works better on the sand. So, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Amazing.
Cool.
Ashley, I think at this point, if we want to open up to questions from the audience.
Yeah, let's do it. We've already had a bunch asked, so I'm going to switch around the order a little bit to sort of keep a conversation going. And the first one that really jumped out to me from Christine. Christine asked, "My son Drew would like to know what causes so many crashes. Going too fast? ? I didn't know there were crashes with that, so please catch the rest of us up.
There's been a ton of crashes. Mars exploration has actually been going on for a long time, going back to the 70s. So if you look in the back matter in Red Rover, there's a sort of a history of like the different probes and landers that we've sent there. And the majority of the early things crashed. We just weren't able to get it quite right as far as how to enter the atmosphere and how to slow down enough. If you don't slow down enough, you're absolutely right. If it goes too fast, then it's just going to crash into the ground way too fast, and everything gets destroyed. That still happens today. There was a couple of probes that went to the moon recently, and they got all the way there, almost landed, but dropped too fast and it crashed. So this wasn't NASA. This was other countries, but like the point is, it's very hard to land something on another planet or on a moon. It requires everything to go exactly right. And with Mars, the big challenge is the fact that there's that 11-minute for the signals. And so there's really nothing that we can do on the ground here to help it. So we can't make slight adjustments at the last minute. Like that all has to be programmed into the computer on board, whatever is landing. So Perseverance has the most advanced computer ever sent. And it was able to adjust all of those things like the angle. If it saw that it was coming in a little bit too steep, it was able to fire a thruster to move a little bit. So all of those things happen automatically. But as with anything that's a machine created by people, there can be hiccups and mistakes. And if even one thing goes just a little bit wrong, then everything gets destroyed. So it's a very delicate balance, and it's very, very impressive when it happens correctly, but it is very, very easy for it to happen incorrectly. And that's why there are so many crashes. But the good news is most of the recent Mars missions by NASA have been totally successful. So we've definitely gotten way better at it. And it's something that hopefully, you never say that it's perfected, but it's definitely something that is much better now than it used to be.
I have another question from the chat. I think this is for Richard as well. If Katherine wants to chime in, you're welcome to. And this is a really big question, and it's, why do you shoot rovers to Mars?
That's an excellent question. And that's, so I guess that gets at the whole point of the book and the whole Mars exploration program. So the reason that rovers are a great choice is because back in the day before they had rovers, they sent things called landers. The Viking landers, the two Viking landers were examples of this. So basically, these are stationary scientific instrument panels that just sort of landed and stayed there. And after a while, NASA realized that they're not getting a lot of variation in the data that they're getting. This thing is just sitting there, and it can take measurements all around it, but at a certain point, like, you're limited to your location. So the natural next step was, okay, let's put wheels on this thing and have it drive around, and it can go farther and explore different places. And that's really what the spark of the idea was for the rovers. And we've had rovers on the moon before. That it was a different thing because the rovers on the moon are more like dune buggies that the astronauts drove around in. So that was more about transportation. These rovers on Mars are about exploration, and we've seen that there's actually they sent some rovers to an asteroid. I don't know if this is NASA or not. I think it was a different space agency, but they sent rovers to an asteroid to land and like roll around on the surface. So these are just the idea of being able to have something that can move around and take measurements. Almost as good as having a person there. Not quite as good, but that's the next best thing. If you can't send an astronaut there, send a rover, because then it can move around and do a lot of things that an astronaut can do.
And what they're trying to do, like to zoom out, the greater purpose of the rovers and why bother going to do Mars missions at all, is to ultimately answer questions about the origins of life on Earth and if there is life on planet Mars, and taking as many samples as they can, and eventually hopefully sending them back. In the meantime, sending the data back to be analyzed and to try to answer some of those bigger questions. Was there water on Mars? Could it ever have been capable of supporting life? Did it ever support life? Did life from Earth come from Mars? Did we have any microbes in common? I mean, we're just looking for any signs of life to tell us more about our species, life in our solar system, in our galaxy, and the origins of life. So it's exciting natural science questions, biological questions, mixed up with this sort of exploration and geological questions that they're answering too. Astrobiology, I think, is what they call it, right, Richard?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, switching gears a little bit, because we have a couple questions about the art in the book.
Sure, yeah.
Someone anonymous asked, what medium is Katherine making the original art with?
Good question. I love watercolor and pencil. So I've got here in front of me, let's see here, let me move my little sketch. I've got my palette, looks like this. And I use watercolors that come in tubes like this. I've got some aquarelle and some Winsor Newton. I don't particularly care about the brand, I just want the colors that I like. And then I draw with pencil. So I will make lots of different sketches with any kind of medium. But once I figure out what I want the composition to be, and I've got the sketch pretty much where I want it, I'll trace it onto a piece of watercolor paper like this with pencil. And then I will paint with watercolor to make the final. So, so it's pretty straightforward media. And then a little bit of digital touch up when I clean it up. So I think the color has been enhanced a little bit for like the cover, for example. I didn't make it quite this red in the watercolor, but very traditional media for this book. So,
yeah. Follow-up question to that. I'm seeing from Lee from the Rotary Club of Corvallis. So it looks like you'll be seeing soon. And Lee asked, can you describe for us the link between your color selections and the Mars soil during your presentation? Great link between science and art.
Yeah. So what's the link between my color selection and the science?
I can promote Lee to be a speaker.
Okay, yeah.
Here to clarify. Yeah, let me.
And Richard, maybe you can talk about the blue in the soil, because I'm not exactly sure where that comes from.
Oh.
Okay.
Lee is a panelist for the next minute.
Okay, Lee, can you unmute? or you, maybe you can.
Let me.
Or I can do a little bit of a demo.
I just have to jump in. We can always. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yep. There you are.
Hello.
Oh,
Hi.
wonderful. You see myself and Becky there in their wedding when her friend got married in Miami recently. We went down to Florida for a wedding and all that kind of good stuff. And
There you are.
here I am with my Oregon
Great.
State shirt on.
Nice to see you.
No, the great presentation. What I'm thinking about is that we're looking forward to your presentation to the Rotary Club, because what you're doing is linking art and science. And the mayor and we got a lot of interesting folks involved in that club. And you talked about the different colors of soil, different layers of soil in on the Mars, on the surface of Mars, and then you had to go through your color selection in order to identify how to make that make the book look really great. I might also tell you that my 10-year-old grandson loves your work. We've given him all your books.
Oh, thank you.
And so
Grassroots always tells me when you buy
more,
books.
let me know. I'll buy some more.
I have more coming.
Okay, great. He wants some more. He lives in Eugene. My daughter has turned him into a duck, but that's okay.
For those of you who are not from Corvallis listening, Corvallis has the home of the State College, where the Beavers, and the university is the Ducks. So there's a lot of rivalry between
and I'm
the two
a pharmacy professor
schools.
from Oregon State, and our daughter went to Oregon, so that was a real problem for us. But we, still.
You still love her?
Yeah, still love her.
Yeah, good.
But your work, how do you describe how you took the science and converted it into art? I mean, I'm a scientist type of person, and I don't have that ability at all to see how you project stuff like that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, just now I was filling in like my little sketch here, and hopefully it won't drip too much, but I just put some blue on the rover. And while we're answering questions, I'll finish putting a little more yellow, just so you can see. I start with the lights and those blues for shadows, and then I'll go ahead and put in the reds and pinks and give it some pop. But Richard, I want to hear from you where the blue comes from in the soil. Can you tell us?
Right, so I can't speak too much about the blue. I know this is something that this is probably a little bit of a gap in my knowledge, but I actually remember when we were talking about final art, and it was specifically the drilling scene where Curiosity is drilling into the rock. And so Emily Feinberg is the editor. So we were discussing like whether it might be, whether some people might see that as water mistakenly. And so I did some research into like what actually was happening there. And because I know she had relayed from you that like the actual color of the rock when you drill down underneath the surface is actually bluish. And so I guess the answer is a lot of rocks sort of come in all different colors here on Earth. And the reason that we see mostly red on Mars is because of the various chemical processes lead to oxidation of the surface sort of molecules. So that's why it's red on the surface. As far as why it's blue, it could also be, one thing to keep in mind is those images that you see from NASA, they're not necessarily pure images. They're color corrected because they're coming from, from wherever they're coming from. They're usually not things that we have, the sort of standard cameras that we have here on Earth. So everything that comes out that we see on the NASA website tends to be not exactly a true color. And a lot of times the contrast between the blue and the red is simply because there's a contrast, like there's something other than red there, and our eye naturally sees that as blue. So that's my sort of like dodgy answer. I don't have an exact answer for why it's blue chemically. But I will say that I think that's.
So the question from a layman's point of view is that Mars has always been known as a red planet. Is it really red?
Yep.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's yeah, that's a true color. If we were ever to be able to bring those samples back, I'm pretty sure they would be actually red.
Okay.
So I think what gets a little bit tricky is the stuff that's under the surface, because we don't really have access to a lot of the under the surface stuff. That's one thing that this new rover hopefully is going to.
A lot of your artwork in the book comes from. Okay, great.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, we don't have true color photos because there's not a person taking those photos to stand there and say that's the correct color. So I am cheating a little bit, but it's based on the best information that I have and a little bit of artistic license, because color changes depending on, the lighting and point of view and all sorts of things. So yeah.
Really
thank you.
Work. You're really great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I'd known I'd been on camera, I'd have dressed up. Something other than OSU orange. Thank you very much. Great program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's another question. You're both very, very knowledgeable about this. And there is a question on here from George who asked, how long did each of you research for your part of the book?
Oh gosh.
That's an
Richard, do you want to
excellent
go
question.
first?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So with this kind of book, because this is like a hobby for me, like the space stuff is something that I've always just sort of like tried to learn about on my own. So I don't even know if it was necessarily considered hardcore research. I mean, like obviously when it came time to write out the details of the book, I made sure to do the research to make sure that all the is as actually accurate as possible. But a lot of this stuff is just sort of internalized for me. Like the sort of general outline of space exploration and what we've done on Mars before. Like that's stuff that I've sort of grown up just sort of geeking out about. So like I knew a lot of stuff already. The actual research is more about like, okay, so if we're going to show this dust storm, how big can we make it? And that's something that I know that Katherine also did a lot of research into, like, making sure that everything was accurate. And like, we don't want to do anything that would be, we didn't want anybody from JPL like calling us up saying, hey, that's not right. So so we, at the end of the day, if we can satisfy the experts, the real experts in the field, then that's I feel like we've done our job.
Do you know if, I was definitely pushing the envelope with this, but did anybody get mad at you or tell you this was wrong? Because we don't really know. No? Okay.
No, so I always cite this because that's one of my favorite spreads. And you can sort of get away with saying that because of the perspective, like it's like a low, like on the ground perspective. Like, even though that thing is probably only 12 feet high, it looks a lot more impressive because you're looking like up at it. And for dramatic effect, definitely you can take some license there. I think that's actually very accurate. We talked a little bit about, so at this point in the book, we did have sort of like some communication. We were emailing back and forth a little bit. I remember you were asking about the lightning because you wanted to make sure that there were some peels of lightning in there. And so I was able to go in and do some research and discover that there is lightning on Mars. Not a lot of thunder because the atmosphere is so thin that it probably doesn't carry sound very well. But there's definitely lightning. So so I think that's one of those cool moments where we were actually able to collaborate and do some sort of joint research and get that right.
Yeah, I think at that point Emily said, "Okay, you two can talk and you get along well enough." Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So related question to this, that question was about how long it took to do research or what types of research you did. And I see actually two questions, kind of the same thing, one from Renee and one from Abigail asking Katherine, how long does it take you to do your drawings? But also, I was wondering if you use references for what you draw and how long it takes for you to fully draw it. So similar.
Yeah. So I think that the sketch stage for this took a long time. I was trying to figure out the feeling of it. I did a lot of research and looking at NASA's website. Unlike neighborhood sharks, I actually got to go see great white sharks, and How to Be an Elephant, where I actually got to go to Africa and meet elephants in the wild. I could not go to Mars for researching this book. Elon Musk did not take my calls, nor would I want to spend, 5 years in transit or whatever it would take. And I don't think they'd pay me enough. But I did a lot of research on NASA's website because, as I said earlier in the presentation, they post every day pretty much all the pictures that Curiosity takes. There's tons of online simulations. There's just rich material for getting first person perspective as much as possible from Curiosity. And there's different 3D models that you can find online where you can turn them in space and you can drive the rover and stick the cam out and turn the head and back them up. There are a number of simulators that show where she landed on Mars. There's maps of her different of her path, and there's different images that you can see from those places. So I tried to learn as much as I could and immerse myself in the mission and where she had been, and then try to make some of these stops along the way look like some of those places. It's been a couple of years since I actually was doing that research, so I don't remember the specific points, but some of these rock formations are based on photos that she actually did send back. And this is based on, photos of the scoop that the NASA has, close-ups of when they were doing test runs on Earth. This is one of the places that she's landed and is driving through. Curiosity's mission has been to go slowly up the mountain from Gale Crater. What's the ridge called? I can't. It's just the
Mount Sharp, right, I think, right? Mount Sharp.
I think so. So
Yeah.
she's slowly making her way up this mountainside. And so the terrain has changed a lot from sand to very rocky. And so I was trying to capture some of those moments. So what I do is I make lots of sketches in a sketchbook, and then I will scan them into my computer, which sometimes just means taking a photo and airdropping it to my computer. And then I will make a little layout in my computer, and I'll drop Richard's text in so I can see how much space it's going to take up. And then I'll print it out and turn the pages and start thinking about whether or not it feels right to me, if I like the placement of things. I send it to the editor pretty early, and she says, oh, we want to put this text on one spread instead of 3. We need to condense this. I think this should be a full page. I think this should be a panel. And so I start to lay it out a little bit differently than what I have. I think I have a dummy. Do I have it right here? Yes. So I just posted this on Instagram. This is one of my first dummies, so it's very tiny. It says Red Rover Draft 3, 12, 13, 17. 40 pages self-ending. That means that it's got that it's going to have end papers that are glued into the book. So this is the end page for first here. This is my first title page approach, where she's got all the little selfies that she's taken. Little Rover likes to roam. It leaves long straight tracks as it goes. The tracks play hide and seek, waiting for the rover to find them again. You can see that these are pretty rough. These are done mostly digitally. Sometimes I will drop in a photo that I've grabbed from the internet, just to remind myself, oh, I'm going to draw a close-up of wheels there. A lot of this doesn't stay how it is. You can see that there's panel here, and the rover there. And it started here. Actually, this is probably, the third draft of it, and it ended up here, right? So there's a lot of transformation, but you can still see that it started with the idea of 2 panels on one page and then a panel on the next page. So basically I just keep working over and over and over again, dummy after dummy after dummy, to get to something that I can share with other people. How readable is it? Is each page different from the last? I'll also print out another version of this that I don't make into a little book, hang it up on my wall, and then look spread by spread and see, do I have too many close-ups? Am I too far away all the time? I want my shots to be as varied as possible to make the reading and the page turning experience as interesting as possible. Here's another example. It is curious. It wants to learn about the world around it. It observes, measures, collects. It is always looking for water. Maybe it is thirsty. So that became this, right? So we put, it is curious, it wants to learn about the world around it, and made that a full page, and then put this idea of having panels all into this page. So that was an edit that I think our editor suggested, and it's much better for it to have this place that we land, this full page, and then have these little insets to show her job. Maybe she's thirsty. So it kind of comes together slowly, and a lot of my time is spent figuring out layer after layer of how the book is going to come together visually and as a story. And the research is happening along the way to make sure that I'm getting information correctly and I'm drawing things correctly. I think Richard's manuscript had some notes in it of like what each thing was supposed to be, because a line of text, it observes, and that's all that's in the manuscript, doesn't exactly tell me what he has in mind. So I think he had some extra information in there. If I'm right, Richard, you had like some notes for the illustrator.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
And that was very helpful because I was unfamiliar with this subject matter or the specifics of it when I started working on it. Here's another example of, I had all these panels and then the Curiosity rover down here. And you can see, that I've got all the different landers and orbiters and things that I had visited before. And then we ended up with, I showed it earlier, but this page here. So the composition changed a little bit, but it made it so that the Curiosity rover was more of a focus and bigger down at the bottom. So a lot of time goes into that. And when the dummy is pretty much how I want it to be, and the editor and I have agreed upon it, and presumably the author has seen it and approves and likes it, then I go ahead and I take my sketches and I print them out onto just black and white paper that's just copy paper. And then I will put it on a light box. Like this one, hold this up, and I will put the sketch here, and then I'll put a piece of watercolor paper on top, and then I will trace it with pencil onto the watercolor paper and finish the painting. And then, slowly one by one, finish each painting and then turn that in. So that takes many hundreds of hours, depending on the complexity of the book. I feel this one came together pretty fast because I got into a groove of drawing rocks and the atmosphere pretty comfortably. The sandstorm page was difficult. I did a lot of versions of that, I think, to get it right. And then I remember the gatefold, this taking a long time to paint all of those rocks. I was so excited about this gatefold when I got the book project and excited to do it. And then when I sat down to actually make the painting, and it was this huge piece of paper, I was like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? This is a disaster. I'm never gonna be able to finish this. And it turned out fine, but it was many days of, kind of freaking out about it until I found what I was gonna do. So I think I had to glue 2 big pieces of watercolor paper together to try to execute this one big painting. So yeah.
I think it turned out better than fine.
Yeah, so that's what my research looked like. What was that?
It turned out better than fine, I would say.
Oh, thanks. I was trying. So this is drawing. So I've got the next level of this going. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is probably put a little bit of like green, yellow kind of cloud in the background. So I'll keep working on that if there's more questions.
Cool. I'm going to switch gears a little bit with the questions.
Okay.
One. Steph asked, do you each have a favorite planet, and asked for all 3 of our answers. So I think I will chime in on this one.
Yeah. Why don't you go first? Since you
Why don't you go first?
You have Yeah.
I'll go first. I think my favorite planet is Saturn, because I think it's really neat that we can see it without any tools from here. And it's so far. And of course, the rings are pretty neat.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Richard?
Katherine, why don't you go?
Okay.
You want me to go? Okay, so yeah, you go first.
I mean, I like Earth. I'm a big fan of Earth. Mars is very exciting too, though. I think that having the 2 planets so close together and having this sort of possible relationship between us is really neat, and sending these rovers and having this communication. But I'm just gonna go with Earth. So yeah, is that okay? Is that a cop-out?
Nice. No, not at all. No.
Okay.
I feel like Mars is a little a cop-out if I take it, but I'm going to go with it because it's like you mentioned, it is so close. It's the kind of thing where it's like I can envision in my lifetime possibly going there. I mean, it's who knows when that's going to happen, but like it's feasible, as opposed to a lot of these other planets. I would love to go to Jupiter. I don't think that's happening in my lifetime, but yeah, so I would have to say Mars. It is a personal love at this point. I mean, it's the subject of my first book, and it's always going to have a very special place in my heart.
Can you actually land on Jupiter? Does Jupiter have rock? It's just
so
gas,
there's no
right?
It's mostly gas. Yeah, it's mostly gas. There is a rocky core, but by the time you get down there, the pressure is so. Interestingly, I think it can actually rain diamonds in the atmosphere of Jupiter. I think I've heard that because it's so much intense pressure, like as from all the gas pressing down, that it actually rains diamonds, which is pretty cool. But yeah,
that's crazy.
I don't think anybody's landing there anytime soon. Yeah,
I did not know that.
We have too many questions to get to, unfortunately. I see 2 people asked about the same question. So I'm gonna pass it on to you 2. It looks like, let me find it. Sarah asked, can we anticipate a sequel to Red Rover, perhaps about perseverance? Or how about a story of those mysterious 11 minutes? And Allison also asked, are you planning on collaborating on a book about perseverance? There's a theme here.
I definitely like that theme. My father actually also suggested that earlier today, and I was like, that's an interesting idea. I would love to do one. I think there's doing any sort of sequel in the book business is tough because like there's a lot of things that have to align for a publisher to want to publish a book. I have always wanted to, not necessarily Perseverance, although like after today I'm a huge Perseverance fan, but I've always wanted to do like more books about other probes or other other spacecraft that we've sent out to the various planets. I always sort of envisioned a series of each one focused on a different planet. So, Pluto, there was the New Horizons probe that went out to Pluto a couple of years ago. That was a huge deal. There's something called Juno that's exploring Jupiter right now, taking amazing pictures. I would love to do more books like that, sort of in the vein of Red Rover, but exploring other planets and other spacecraft, and I would love to do with Katherine. But again, these are things that are often out of our control. We can pitch these things, we can suggest them, but it's up to the publisher whether they want to publish them.
Yeah, and the same goes for me. I would love to work with Richard again, and if it were Perseverance or another probe, or he had a different idea, I would totally be game. I think it'd be really fun to do a follow-up to this book in some way. I don't imagine that publishers would want to do like the Perseverance rover, because we've just done this one. Like, I think they would worry about it competing with it, but I don't know. And if the book were different enough, had a different approach to it, that might work. But I would love to work with Richard again, and it would be so fun to do another science or space book. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, on this note, we are almost out of time for this event.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Richard and Katherine, do either of you have any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to share right in the last couple minutes as we wrap up? Sure.
That's my drawing.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, I like to play with a lot of different color as much as possible. Let's see, is that too bright? Yeah, that's too bright. But yeah, I just it's been fun to doodle this while you guys have been talking and while we've been answering questions. It's been really fun to chat about our book and to present together. And thank you all for coming out tonight and for asking great questions and for listening. And we're excited to do this, and we love to do more events. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I echo all of that. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. I would love to answer all of them. But yeah, it's been so much fun to chat about this book and about Perseverance and all the excitement from today. And yeah, I hope this is not our last time doing this.
And also, if you are on social media, you can always ask me more questions. I'm on Twitter at KRoy Studio and Instagram at Katherine Roy Studio. Richard is on Instagram as well. It's RICHK.
Not on Instagram,
right?
On Twitter.
Oh, sorry, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just Twitter though, not Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so you can follow us, you can ask us questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And if you're excited about the book, please buy a copy, especially from Grassroots. It will be signed by me, and you will get a free print if you order from our store. Richard also has another book coming out. You want to hold it up, Richard? In 2 weeks, the last package, which you can also order from Grassroots.
Right.
Yeah, it's not. I did not draw it. It's by our amazing friend and colleague Jessica Lannon. But yeah, it's coming out in 2 weeks. Okay.
2 weeks. Yeah, March 2nd. I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing is, if you order this book from Grassroots, you'll be entered to win a large 16 by 24 Jacqueline print that I am making available to some lucky winners. So we hope that you will buy a book from them. Uh-oh, you're muted.
Well, thank you for the endorsement.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone so much for coming. This was such a fun conversation to be a part of. And Katherine and Richard, I so appreciate your willingness to share your time and your insight and your artistic ability and your scientific knowledge with us to our members. Support our authors tonight by buying their book here with us. You can find it by clicking the link I pasted into the chat or on our website. Your support helps small bookstores like us stay open and keep bringing authors to our community. So on that note, thank you so much again, everyone, and we hope to see you back for more events soon.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.